I'm Jennifer Pendergrass, and I teach at Taylorsville and New Harley.
And I'm Jennifer Mayer, and I teach at Woodland Middle. And today we're going to talk to you about what's new with Access 2.0 in 2017.
We practiced that a lot.
We did. First, we're going to talk about the 2017 Access standard setting.
So when you say Access standard setting, that's not something we usually talk about, standards with Access. What do you mean?
Well, essentially, standard setting determines the student's performance required for each proficiency level through a series of decisions that were made for each grade level by expert panels of teachers as well as state English language learner administrators.
What does that mean?
Well, essentially it means to meet the language demands of college and career readiness standards, we're raising the bar for language proficiency.
Okay. But it almost sounds like if we're making it more difficult for the students to reach a certain score, our scores may not be so hot this year.
That brings me to my next point, Jennifer, which is analyzing the 2017 scores. Essentially, with the standard setting, it's expected to impact our Access for ELS 2.0 in the following ways. A, some student scores may go down. And then, of course, we're not going to have as many students exiting the program.
Okay, so it's okay to know that student scores may go down. It doesn't mean they didn't make progress. But they're not going to be eligible to exit, most likely, if they're not scoring high enough.
That's true. And one good thing is that we are still going to be able to measure their progress looking at last year's scores, even though they're completely different. WIDA has promised that they're going to make a calculator available to kind of even out the playing field so we can look at those sub-scores and determine whether or not progress has been made. Now, of course, since the weights are definitely different on the scale scores, it's not going to be perfect, but we should be able to see whether or not they've made progress.
Okay. And I guess one positive thing about having a year when we expect test scores to go down is that not only do we know that doesn't mean they didn't make progress necessarily, but also we don't have any SLOs this year.
That's true.
All right.
That's true.
Yeah. All right.
So Jen, why don't you tell the teachers about Georgia's new exit criteria?
That's right. So we do have national changes with the Access test, but also Georgia's making some changes as far as exit criteria. You may recognize these flowcharts. Oh no, they won't know these flowcharts. These are just for ESOL teachers.
That's
well,
right.
You're very lucky to not know these flowcharts. This kindergarten flowchart will help an ESOL teacher determine whether or not Access scores are high enough for a kindergarten student to exit. And in kindergarten, it's very straightforward. If they score 5 in all domains, they exit, period. And if they don't, they don't. Then there's this flowchart for grades 1 through 12. And it's much more complex, lots more arrows, and a lot of iffy categories. It asks you to look at CPL, the overall score. It asks you to look at literacy sub-scores. And then for those students who score right on the borderline, you can have a language assessment conference and determine whether or not that student should exit. This is what we've done for the last several years. But now we have a couple of changes here in Georgia. One of the changes is that we're no longer using that sub-literacy score at all in determining exit.
So the good news here is if you forget your secret decoder ring, it's no problem because we no longer need it.
That's right. It's a lot more simple. And then the other thing is that language assessment conference, we're not having those anymore to determine exit. So these are out the window. The reason is ESO wants us to have a statewide uniformity for exit. And if one student's getting a language assessment conference that may go positive and another language assessment conference doesn't, we're not having uniformity. So basically, with no longer using literacy subscores and no longer holding language assessment conferences, we'll know if a student exits if they score 5.0 or above. If they do, they exit. If a student scores 4.9 or below, they don't exit. So So if you compare this chart with this one, the state of Georgia did us a favor.
Yes, they did. As a matter of fact, we're just going to do this right now.
Paula Camp, if you're seeing this somewhere, I'm going to pick that up and dust it off. It's going back in my PIT notebook. But
what we're going to say is we're now going to use this.
That's right. We're going to use this one.
This is very official, and if you would like, we'll add color.
That's right. We can make a copy of this for the district. So basically, we've shared with you some national changes from Access and some statewide changes.
State-specific changes. So who's ready to go look at some scores?
Oh, they're going to be lower scores, so I feel torn about it. But knowing that it doesn't mean that there was no progress, and we're going to work together to find how to compare those. I mean, I guess I'm ready for it.
All right. Well, can I at least get a high five for feeling more prepared?
Let's do it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.